Hello everyone. Okay, I hope we're all well and happy. Now, this session today, or this lesson today, is going to be on the different factions within the Democratic Party, the different groupings within that party. Yeah, so it's going to be quite a long PowerPoint. It might end up being 2 videos. So anyway, let's crack on with it. Now, within the Democrat Party, there are some broad areas of agreement amongst Democrat Party politicians, and these include they tend to have a positive view of the government and of the state, and they therefore tend to support big government programs such as Obamacare is an example, other kind of social welfare programs. They will intervene in the economy if needs be, for example, the stimulus package under Obama, which most Democrats agreed with. They tend to be socially liberal, so that means they support things like gay rights, gay marriage, women's right to have an abortion, reforming society to protect and enhance African American lives, those sorts of issues. They tend to be more supportive of gun control, so they don't believe, well, most Democrats don't believe in abolishing guns. But they do support more controls on guns. There should be restrictions on who can have guns, possibly more background checks on people, that type of stuff. They tend to support welfare programs, and they're often classed as being liberal or progressive. So they're the broad areas of agreement amongst Democrats, and what possibly differentiates them from Republicans. Now, there's 3 main groups of Democrat politicians. Okay, on the left of the party, you've got a group who tend to be known as the progressive left. In the middle, you've got what's known as the Democratic Leadership Council, or the New Democrats, as Bill Clinton called them in the 1990s. And then towards the centre of US politics, you might even say the slightly right of centre, this particular group of Democrats, you've got what's known as the Blue Dog Democrats. Okay, they're your more conservative Democrats. Now, a lot of Democrat politicians probably have a few, they probably don't neatly fit into 3 categories. Some might lean towards one but have a few ideas from the other one still and things like that. But these are the 3 main divisions, and they do caucus in Congress, i.e. they do meetings in Congress amongst Democrats, and there tends to be like a progressive left caucus and a blue dog caucus and things of that nature. But like in the UK, isn't it, where you've got like Momentum in the Labour Party, or in the Conservatives you have different factions who will often meet up, the MPs, to have a little natter every now and again. So let's discuss the progressive left of the Democrat Party. So their key ideas are they like to celebrate the past achievements of the Democrats, such as civil rights, the New Deal under FDR, the Great Society, all these kind of big government schemes which the Democrats kind of spearheaded in the past. They support extending healthcare coverage. Many of them were disappointed by Obamacare because they thought it wasn't radical enough. Some in this group want a more universal healthcare system, a bit like the UK. Some don't go that far, but they still want healthcare to be extended. They tend to be most supportive about restricting firearms. There are 1 or 2 in this group who want, much tougher regulations on firearms, but they do tend to support more restrictions on firearms. They tend to have the largest support for increasing the minimum wage. They support comprehensive immigration reform. So some of this group want to give amnesty to some of those illegal Hispanics who enter the country, but they are looking for some kind of big reform to the immigration system. They tend to support tax increases for the most wealthy as well. So again, that's an area which this group have. And they support LGBT rights and women's rights as well. So they're very supportive of things like gay marriage rights and those sorts of things. So I'm just making the screen a bit bigger so it gets in the bottom part as well. How do you make it bigger? Anyhow, okay, so that's some of the key things which they believe in and support. Now, the strength in the Democrat Party is they're the 2nd largest caucus within the Congressional Democrats. So in other words, out of all the Democrats, the 2nd largest number of Democrats identify with being in this group. There are 97 House members of this particular group, so 97 members of the current Congress are from this group. There's one Senator, Bernie Sanders, who clearly identifies with this group. And again, and this might show the strength, is that the grassroots of the Democrat Party might be more supportive of the progressive left. I mean, Bernie Sanders gained 13 million votes in the primaries of 2016. Not sure how many he got in 2020, actually, I meant to have a look. But it clearly shows there's a large element of the Democrats in terms of the grassroots and also in members of Congress who clearly support that more progressive left agenda. Okay, Nancy Pelosi, she's no longer in this group because as Speaker she's kind of a little bit out of it, but she actually was a co-founder of the progressive left back in the day. So again, she identifies with this group, and obviously she leads a key leadership position, doesn't she, within the Democrat Party. In terms of some key people, some senior Democrats clearly identify with this group, even if they perhaps don't caucus with them. So like Senator Elizabeth Warren, for example, she has many ideas for the progressive left, although she's not officially part of the progressive left, but she clearly is, if that kind of makes sense. Just can't be bothered to actually join a group on it. And some of her ideas, that when she was on the Senate Banking Committee, she was very fierce in her criticism of the banks and the financial industry regarding the crash of 2008-9. She introduced into Congress a Student Loan Fairness Act, where it said that students should be able to borrow from the government at the same rates of big banks, not at higher rates, which they currently do. And she has also led opposition to Obama's Trans-Pacific Partnership Treaty as well, because she said it gave too much power to the corporations. This is a free trade agreement which Obama did. Interestingly, Donald Trump's also against it as well, because he said it transfers jobs from America to China. And as we know, he doesn't like China very much. But anyway, some of the progressive left were also quite unhappy with this deal as well. Okay, and this is someone else from the progressive left, Congresswoman Omar of Minnesota. She's originally from Somalia. Now, these are things which she has supported, so a living wage, universal healthcare, affordable housing. She wants to get rid of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, known as ICE. This is one that's been detaining those children and stuff coming across the border, and she's denounced as well the Israeli settlement policy as well. So she's pretty much on the left of US politics, I would say. She's been very critical of Donald Trump, and I noticed at quite a few rallies Donald Trump was actually attacked her and said she should go home and things of that nature. So they are the progressive left within the Democrat Party. Quite a loud group, I would say. Clearly got the support of quite a few grassroots members. A pretty large section of the Democrat Party within Congress itself. However, are they the dominant part is a bit more debatable. Now, the next group are known as the Democratic Leadership Council, or the New Democrats. So their main areas of interest are, well, they really formed themselves following the Reagan years, where they were kind of disastrous for the Democrats. Now, they didn't win the presidency for 3 elections in a row. This group likes to describe themselves as moderates. They kind of took on quite a little bit of Reagan's agenda, I suppose. I suppose that there are similarities between New Labour and Thatcherism, I suppose. They believe in responsible economics and trying to have balanced budgets. Many of them, for example, supported the tax cuts of George W. Bush in the 2000s, although they didn't support Donald Trump's a couple of years ago. They support Obamacare. They think it's about right, Obamacare. You know, it's kind of allowed more people to get healthcare coverage, but hasn't gone down the universal path. So they think it's probably, you know, about the right kind of compromise. Although today, many even on the moderate side are saying that they want to reform Obamacare. They do support some restrictions on guns, or many of them do. They tend to be pro-choice, a little bit like the progressive left, so they support things like a woman's right to choose to have an abortion or not. They support LGBT rights, African American rights. So in that respect, they're very similar to the progressive left. They do tend to support a stronger law and order policy. Some in this group tend to be more supportive of the death penalty, for example. You do find a large number of the progressive left who are not so keen on the death penalty. So this group, they do support strong law and order policies. And they tend to be more hawkish than progressive left on foreign policy. In other words, they're more supportive of using US troops abroad to deal with people, etc., etc. Now, the strength within the Democrat Party, they're the largest faction within the Democrat Party at the moment. So within all the congressmen and congresswomen that are currently in Congress, this is the strongest faction, the strongest caucus within that Congress for the Democrats. They currently have about 103 House members. This is before the 2020 elections. That was up by 42 from the previous Congress. Now, that shouldn't really surprise us because these are moderates. And if you think about it, in the midterm elections in 2018, that obviously the Democrats took seats off Republicans. So those districts are going to be slightly more conservative, aren't they, than kind of your safe Democrat districts, which are going to be quite liberal. So in many ways, every time the Democrats gain seats off Republicans, those people they're going to be slightly more conservative than, say, your safe kind of Democrat seats. So you can probably expect, I would say, in 2020, if the Democrats gain seats, there are going to be more people in this column and possibly in the Blue Dog Democrats, who we're going to come to in a few moments. Okay, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were from this faction. Hillary, of course, won the 2016 primaries, which might suggest that actually a lot of Democrat grassroots are on more the moderate side. They're a bit less shouty than the progressive left, but it might suggest that many Democrats are quite pragmatic, many grassroots, and therefore thought Hillary had the best chance of defeating Donald Trump. I would say the same was true for Joe Biden, by the way. Joe Biden is very much from this group as well. He's quite a moderate Democrat. And again, the fact he won the primaries in 2020 suggests that most Democrats either identify themselves with this more moderate centre of the party, or a lot of Democrats are fairly pragmatic when it comes down to it and were willing to support that moderate for the top job. Okay, I think I'm going to run out of time for this video, so I will make another one which deals with the second half, so to speak.